knowing Luke for he's almost 7 years or something now. He has sold me coffee and chocolate and fair trade deliciousness. Um, just want a quick reminder to go ahead and use your click in the top right part of your screen and go to speaker view. That'll give you the best view for the presentation. And if you have any comments or questions throughout the talk, feel free to put them in the chat box, and we'll either get to them during the presentation or we'll wait and do them after. And yeah, here's Luke Fowler. Luke is a sales representative, worker owner, because this is a cooperative, and actual board member at Equal Exchange. So he is doing triple duty there. He works with grocery stores, food co-ops, distributors, and cafes throughout the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast. His favorite activity, and I don't know if he's just saying this for us, but is working with food co-ops.
It's true.
We're creating food supply chains that take care of every stakeholder as possible, from farmer to roaster, manufacturer, grocery worker to citizen consumer. I met Luke when he lived in Madison, Wisconsin, but he now is in sunny Florida and is married, raising 2 kids, and inline speed skating and free diving throughout the state of Florida. Maybe that's why he moved out of the frozen tundra. Luke, thank you so much for being here with us. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you for the nice introduction. Yes, I feel like very much like an anomaly in Florida with all of those things that you just that you just mentioned. A cooperator, not necessarily focused on rugged individualism. I really am excited to work with food co-ops. They are my favorite customers. This is true. So should I go ahead and share my screen? Try to get this show on the road. Let's see. I'm gonna do it to full screen. Just make sure I can toggle through. So when Chris asked me to do this presentation, there is a kind of standard presentation that we could do at Equal Exchange where we talk about the history of fair trade and how Equal Exchange came about. I wanted to create some type of idea that could funnel down, that could both connect how Fredericksburg Food Co-op works and how unique it is and how special it is to have a food co-op in your community, and how Equal Exchange fits within that system and creates a really unique and special dynamic and supply chain from farmer to consumer member owner that is unlike any supply chain in the United States. We're really proud of that at Equal Exchange, to be able to have created something like that and be part of something that's bigger than ourselves. And so that's where this idea of mission, quality, service, price, as the title for the talk, comes from. And hopefully you come away feeling, come away from this talk feeling that you're not only part of Fredericksburg Food Co-op, but that you're members of something much, much larger than that, right? So, and that's where the idea of sharing power and creating democracy in the food system comes in. And so, real quickly, Equal Exchange, this is our first product. We've just celebrated our 35th anniversary on May 1st. Our first product was Cafe Nika. This is a rendering of it, what it looked like. We had to circumvent an embargo on Nicaraguan coffee 35 years ago that was placed by the Reagan administration. And so we celebrate our anniversary on May Day every year, because that was the day that our coffee was released. It's also obviously a very big day in the labor movement, but that is the origins of Equal Exchange. And as I funnel down here through it and kind of try to give you a picture of who Equal Exchange is, we were the first fair trade food and beverage company in the United States. So started with coffee. Before that, there were handicrafts, kind of 10,000 villages type things, but the idea of working with small scale farmers and farmer cooperatives and importing it and creating a base price on that, that was really wasn't introduced until 1986 when Eco Exchange did it. There was that existed in Europe, and then we kind of took that model and brought it over here. And our founders were working at a food co-op distribution warehouse in 1986, and a lot of local foods moving through that, regional farmers distributing their produce and goods through the warehouse. And the three founders worked there and said, what if we did something with international foods? What if we connected this thing that's happening locally with farmers who are working all over the globe? And then the other thing that's unique about Eco Exchange is we could have become just a standard privately held company. We thought about being some kind of nonprofit, but pretty early on, our founders had this vision of creating a worker-owned cooperative so that democracy and selling were somehow, that democracy and selling were integral to our mission. It wasn't the farmers were members of food co-ops, or excuse me, the farmers were members of farmer co-ops. They came out of the food co-op system, mainly consumer owned. They were creating this thing in the middle of the supply chain, trying to think of a model of what could work, and the worker owned cooperative aspect worked, was the thing that became our model that we have today as a worker owned co-op. I, I also wanted to include some things here to kind of illuminate the fact that, like, Eco Exchange is not somehow working in isolation. We are creatures of a market beyond ourselves. And so we don't only sell to food co-ops. We wish we could exist in this cool, perfect world where the food co-ops were the grocer du jour across the country, and there was a stronger system of co-ops. But we do sell to places like Amazon, Target, Kroger, Giant, and Wegmans, right? Just because those are the economics that exist in the market to be a successful organization. So, but what we do try to do is leverage what we take from selling to those folks and hopefully put it back into what we what we do best, which is develop really strong supply chains, work with food co-ops, independent cafes, and unique operators throughout the supply chain. The other thing I wanted to touch on is we're a multinational conglomerate, and I think that's only to say that we've been affiliated with alternative trade organizations for a long time, and throughout the decades, some of those have struggled, and we, as a successful organization, have come in and helped kind of bail some of these organizations out in their time of need. And so we actually own an organization called Eco Exchange UK, which was independent of Eco Exchange for a very long time, but they ran into financial trouble. They're now part of Eco Exchange. There's a organization in Canada called La Siembra that ran into financial trouble. We stepped in, helped them out there. We now have an operating agreement with them where we're tightly connected. And then in Fredericksburg Food Co-op, you'll see Eco Exchange bananas and avocados distributed through Four Seasons Produce. And for a long time, that company was called OK USA. They used the Eco Exchange brand. We had like a 10% stake in them for a very long time. They ran into some financial trouble, and we now own that produce company almost outright. And in fact, so both Eco Exchange UK and OK USA, which is our banana arm, those they operate independently, and Eco Exchange as an organization has just offered them access to become worker owners of Eco Exchange. So it's a very confusing kind of system of things, but this is all to say that we operate outside of just selling coffee and chocolate and nuts and things. And then the other thing is we are a for-profit company. We do try to at the end of the year make a modest profit in order to stay in business. So I wanted to create kind of a duality of what we are. There's that in order to be this really exceptional organization, there are elements of the market that you do have to take some advantage of just in order to exist. I hope that makes sense. And now I'm going to kind of walk us through the chain of mission quality. Give me 1 second. I just realized my computer is not plugged in and I got a low battery. If anybody has any questions too while I'm doing that. There we go. Okay. But what I wanted to say was that I'm going to hopefully walk us through here in the next 30 minutes of time of looking at how our product gets to the shelf at Fredericksburg Co-op through the lens of what our mission is, how we think about quality, the idea of service, like the idea of how you distribute a product to get to a place like Fredericksburg Co-op, and then how our organization, Equal Exchange, manages to get pricing to a point where it's actually competitive and not cost disadvantageous, where you're not losing money by shopping at the co-op just to support an idea. There's benefits to buying Equal Exchange both on the values front and the value front. Let me see here. Oh, is this a question from you, Chris, about the produce?
Yeah, but you're not supposed to see that. I'm just starting the.
Oh, okay.
I'm just starting the question.
I got an alert. So Equal Exchange, we purchase almonds, cashews, pecans, tea, chocolate from mango from small scale farmers all over the world, including farmers in the US. But I wanted to focus on coffee today as just kind of a lens to walk us through how product gets from the farmer to your shelf and what it takes in order to get there. And so this is a farmer harvesting coffee cherries. Those are the red cherries in there and in their basket there. And hopefully I'll be able to articulate just, and I'm sure most of you already know this, just how hard people work to bring our food to the stores and into our kitchens and into our pantries. Can I move forward? There we go. So at Equal Exchange's mission, our mission, the words in our mission do a lot of work here. So we'll try to break it down here. Equal Exchange's mission is to build long-term trade partnerships that are economically just and environmentally sound. That makes sense, right? To foster mutually beneficial relationships between farmers and consumers, and to demonstrate through our success the contribution of worker co-ops and fair trade to a more equitable, democratic, and sustainable world. So there's a lot going on in that mission, but the thing that it boils down to me is that we're highly invested in supporting small scale farmers, not and the way that we view that is much different than the historical ideas of aid or mission work. Like it's very much the needs are driven by what farmers need, and we're there to provide to be a consistent purchaser, to give money. Obviously, price, what we pay for coffee is extremely important to farmers, but more than that, just investing in infrastructure. The infrastructure of I've been setting up little irrigation lines for fruit trees I planted in Florida here, and just for me, that's a fairly easy thing, but for farmers that live on the side of a mountain, irrigation isn't necessarily something that uh, is easily or readily available. And so farmers have to be very creative, but also rely on networks and communities of people in order to get a harvest in order to sell, and bring to market. Um, and again, I just want to reiterate, both the farmers and the consumers are an important part of eco exchange. We're extremely focused on all of our stakeholders, not just eco exchange as a business, but it's the farmers, it's the consumers, it's us, it's the environment, right? So that's our mission. And I just want to, so just going back to the idea of what farmers do on the left here on this picture, this is compost that's being built. We all love compost, but compost in the last 10 years has been a huge investment area for eco exchange and the farmer groups that we work with. Soil improvements, quality improvements are a huge focus area. It's not just improving yields, getting more coffee year after year. It's improving the taste of the coffee, and a lot of that starts with being able to amend soil to produce better coffee. So, and again, this is things we're doing across all of our supply chains, from tea and chocolate and nuts and things, but coffee we have a high degree of investment in, and the farmer co-ops that we work with are particularly invested in this around coffee. And then on the picture on the right here, this is a kind of like a pre-sorting station. So after the farmers harvest their coffee, they would bring it down to this bin. They would fill this up with water, and then one of the things you'll see in the next few slides is just how much quality control goes into coffee. So, and any coffee cherry here that has like a coffee borer in it or something, coffee that's not fully developed, those coffees will float to the top. The farmers will skim those off. Those will get often sold to the coyotes, which in before there was fair trade and the cooperatives, they were kind of the only game in town. They took advantage of farmers. Now they tend to get the worst of the worst coffee that the farmers have to offer, because of the developments that have happened on the supply chain and the amount of power that small scale farmer co-ops have been able to leverage over the years to be able to generate good prices and transparent prices for what they're producing. So beyond Eco Exchange's mission, working with small scale farmer co-ops around the globe, providing consumers with access to products from international farmers that are organized democratically. One of our major focus areas since we started roasting in the last two decades has really been on supporting farmers on improving their quality. If farmers are able to increase the quality of their product, they're able to ask for higher prices for their product. And so we're purchasing mostly organic coffee. The yields tend to be smaller. So if farmers are able to generate higher quality coffee, they can get higher prices. So we start with Arabica coffee always. So for folks who don't know, that coffee is broken down into two major components. There's Robusta and Arabica. Robusta tends to be stronger, higher in caffeine. Robusta can be grown in rows, it can be grown on plantations, it can be harvested with machines. But it tends to be lower quality, much more acrid. And this is the type of coffee that you would see in your Folgers and your Maxwell Houses and your instant coffees. Arabica coffee is a hand harvested product. This is something that can only be harvested by hand. It's a very, very labor intensive product, but it grows well in the mountains in the range between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic Capricorn, right? Am I getting those two areas right? The tropical regions, and it grows well up in the mountains on the sides of hills where it's very hard. It would be very hard to get machinery that would be able to harvest this anyway. It's very labor intensive, right? So the other thing that we focus on too is we import coffee that only has a quality score of 80 plus. So if folks aren't familiar, there's an organization called the Specialty Coffee Association, and they've developed a pretty standardized tasting criteria for all coffees. So coffees that have defects in them, that have been stored behind a truck where diesel is running against them, those coffees tend to score low. You can tell that they're not great coffees to begin with because of different elements that go into that. We reject those coffees, and that's not out of some type of maliciousness towards farmers, but it's like we are trying to sell a product in the market. And one of the things that makes Equal Exchange unique and sets us apart from other coffee companies is we send tons of feedback, weekly feedback to farmer co-ops about what we are tasting in their cups, and give them back to the farmers and farmer co-ops for them to be able to implement and improve their quality for the next harvest. Or if coffee is still being harvested off of other parts of the mountains or higher up, that they can be able to implement that before the end of their harvest season, essentially.
Hey,
And then yeah,
let me interrupt you. I got a couple of
please.
questions that I think are kind of
Ooh,
good
let's
to do
go.
right now. So one I
Okay.
would say is, what percentage of coffee on the market would you say is Arabica
Hmm.
versus Robusta?
Yeah, there used to
Is that
be
knowable?
that is knowable. I think there used to be the standard that it was 90% Robusta, 10% Arabica. I think those percentages have changed quite a bit over time. The two top coffee producing countries in the world are Vietnam and Brazil. Vietnam produces almost exclusively Robusta coffee, and Brazil is more half and half. They have a lot of like low plains coffee that they harvest, and then the but they also have Arabica kind of up in the highlands as well. The farmers we import from, we don't import from Vietnam or Brazil, but these tend to be smaller scale farmers growing almost exclusively organic coffee. So I think in the organic realm, the percentages for Arabica coffee tend to be much higher, actually. So
Okay.
I can't give a specific number. It's something good to go back and look, but because the market has shifted over the last couple of decades too.
Yeah, people's taste standards have
Yeah,
risen a little.
but
So
the
also
majority has been Robusta for a long
still
time.
Robusta. Okay.
Hmm.
And then during the compost picture, which is such a cool picture,
Yeah.
Els wanted to know, do you guys, and you said you work with farmers to get quality up, to get soil amended. Do you guys have ag consultants that literally work for Equal Exchange, or are they just on the farmer side that you help them?
It's a little bit of both. So I think this is one of the cool things, and I'll get to this with the Biosphere coffee. We've been working with this grant through USAID for a very long time. So at Eco Exchange, we have two coffee buyers dedicated to traveling to source, signing contracts, and everything. But we also have a grants team that works with that has been working on these quality projects for a very long time. And the soil thing has been a huge component of this grant. Most farmer co-ops have agronomists that that are hired that work for the co-op. So I went to Chiapas, Mexico in 2014 to visit farmers. I had two agronomists that worked, and they go out in the field constantly and meet up with farmers to help them improve their processes for uh, planting, fertilizing, harvesting, soil amendments. Like they are the experts out in the field for their specific regions and areas. Great
Okay, cool.
questions.
I'm
Yep.
gonna I'm gonna let you get back to it.
No problem. These are awesome questions.
Thanks.
So the next thing I wanted to say is long-term trading partnerships that build quality over time. So some of the co-ops we've worked with almost since the beginning of EcoExchange, almost 35 years. Most of the co-ops we worked with, we've been working with for a decade plus, and that what we've done there is really set the standard for how you should trade with small scale farmers. There's a, I think there's a subset in the coffee, the high end coffee community that says only go out and find the best coffee that you can find. When it's available, you pay the highest price for that coffee. But that style of buying tends to favor farmers who can afford to pour resources into creating these very, very high quality coffees. And it also favors companies that also want to charge, coffee companies that also want to charge very, very high prices for their coffee. Our philosophy has been stick with farmers and farmer co-ops for a very, very long time, even if the quality is so-so to begin with. Over the years of working with them over and over and over again, you can develop patterns and habits for quality over time, even with low resources. And that has a twofold advantage. It provides a consistent buyer for those farmers. They know exactly who's going to come in every year and buy their coffee and buy a lot of it. And EcoExchange tends to buy a lot of coffee from the farmers that we purchase from. And then for EcoExchange, the advantage is if there is ever a downturn in the market, if there's a bad harvest, if for some reason Brazil has a bad harvest and coffee prices shoot up and there's a shortage of coffee, co-ops all of a sudden have to prioritize who they're going to sell coffee to. And by being a consistent buyer over time, we, we can tend to get first preference for A, good coffee, and B, buying a lot of that good coffee. So that's where that idea comes from. The other thing I want to say too is the tastes of coffee drinkers have changed somewhat over the last decade or two, where I think because of the Starbucks boom, American drinkers favored dark roast coffees, and we in the 90s we really kind of rode the tail of that boom. In the last decade or so, light roasts have really kind of come into favor among younger, higher end coffee drinkers. The one of the standards that get set out in the coffee roasting industry is that you put your worst coffees in your dark roasts, because the roasting process can hide or mask the flavors of something that you might not want to feature in a light roast. But I think one of the things that makes EcoExchange unique is that we really focus on making exceptional dark roasts, exceptional light roasts too, but exceptional dark roasts. Our dark roasts get as good of coffee as our light roasts do. And our standard at EcoExchange is sweet, clean, and uniform. We want to provide delicious consistency over even if the blend changes, if the source changes for where coffee is coming from for our French roast or our breakfast blend, that always tastes consistent, it's sweet, and it's uniform. And then I mentioned the thing about constant feedback to the farmers too, but that is a major component of what our quality team does, is communicating constantly back to back to farmer co-ops and giving them tons of information to work with. This is a drying patio here. These are all this is coffee, green coffee with the cherry removed here. It goes onto these drying patios. This is where a lot of the investments from fair trade purchases end up going. This is where the quality improves over time. 20 years ago, this co-op, this is Comsa in Honduras, they may not have had this drying patio, but they've been able to improve yields over time and then reinvest the money that they've made through fair trade purchases to expand their drying capacity. You can see there's solar panels on there. They have storage behind there, to create a very legitimate operation. And this is all within a cooperative structure. There's no private owner who's charging rent or exorbitant prices to come dry their coffee in the community. The farmers own this operation. And then going back to the quality sorting thing. So when the harvest comes in, you know, farmers don't just only harvest their coffee. There's also other opportunities to make money within the coffee supply chain. So here, this is, I believe in Guatemala, another sorting station. So that, again, this is post-processed coffee. It's been dried, and these women are looking for defects in the coffee, again, to generate high prices at market. So this is, again, trying to demonstrate that there's a lot that goes into coffee before it even gets roasted. So, and one of the things we like to say at Eco Exchange is, like, so many people have done so many things well to make your coffee taste, be it, to present it in its most excellent form, that you as the consumer or the coffee brewer are the last line in that step of all those hands that have touched that to make sure that your your coffee is as good as it can be by the time it gets to you. And so if it doesn't taste good, that's your fault. Not really. I, I I'm joking about that. So other elements of quality, and Chris, feel free to interrupt with any questions too. I talked about the USAID grant. One of the cool new products that Eco Exchange has released to food co-ops only. We're only doing this with food co-ops, is this new coffee called Bio Revolution. And so I believe $1 of every purchase of that coffee is going into a pool to create $25,000 worth of scholarships for farmer co-op leaders from Nicaragua, Guatemala, Honduras, Peru, Colombia, to be able to come together and do information exchange and training together. So one of the the next level development we've gotten to in the last 5 to 10 years is really this idea of inter-co-op and inter-country training and information sharing, because one co-op or one country may have developed really good systems around certain things, but that knowledge is just staying with them, and there's this realization in the co-op community, farmer co-ops. This is the 6th principle of cooperation, which is cooperation among cooperatives, right? And so really trying to invest in that next step of quality improvement. And then one other thing I want to touch on quality is Eco Exchange is a direct purchaser of coffee, which is not necessarily the standard for coffee roasters in the US, and of many sizes. So one of the kind of standard operating procedures is there are growers, but there are also exporters, and there's importers, and there's brokers that all can suck up money and kind of dilute the information chain between the farmer and the roaster. Eco Exchange takes on a ton of risk by purchasing coffee directly from farmers. We our auditors, when we look at our financials at the end of the year, they always say, you have a lot of inventory of green coffee. That is just, but it's just part of our business model to have all of that. We are taking that risk away from farmers because it's already risky enough to grow and hold your product without necessarily knowing that you're going to have a buyer. Whereas a lot of other coffee roasters are spot buying coffee through brokers. They're buying small lots at a time. Eco Exchange is buying containers of coffee at a time, millions and millions of pounds of coffee from around the world. And that really, again, that that's unique because it's risky, but it also has its advantages because, like I said before, it allows us direct connection to the farmers. And if there's ever a downturn in the market, we have that direct connection with the farmers. We're going to be able to get really good coffee. Whereas if you have 10 steps removed from you the roaster, and the grower, you're just not as high on uh, that priority chain for getting coffee long term. So that's the quality section. Does anybody else have questions on quality before I move on?
Well, Gerald had a good question that, and I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, but he wanted to know, do you work with farmers to get their quality scores above that 80 number? So if you ever
Yeah,
turn down, do you ever come back and try to work with them again after some support?
yeah. It really takes it would take a willful effort of farmer co-ops to have us go away as a buyer. Like we want to be, if we reject coffee, that does not mean we're breaking up with a coffee co-op. Like we're coming back again if they're putting solid effort into improving their scores. And so, and then again, 80 is just the baseline. Our average is more like 84. We have some really great coffees that score at 87. We tend not to go after the ones that are 90 plus, 95, that, you know, that really only a few people can get their hands on. They tend to be really expensive. That's a very narrow section of the coffee market. There's not very much coffee that's grown in there. So ours is buy a lot of coffee in volume at a high price. That really makes a huge impact on farmers.
Okay, and because you mentioned working with cooperatives as a
Yes.
cooperative yourself,
Yeah.
Rich wanted to know: do you mainly buy from farmer cooperatives, or also, a lot from just individual for-profit farmers?
The the no that we only buy from cooperatives. The only exception to that are some of our US farmers. So, and that's mainly because of the products we're dealing with. There's no, we buy almonds from this family called the Burroughs Family Farm in California. There's no real almond growers cooperative. I think Diamond is a growers cooperative, but like that structure is so, looks so different than small farmer co-ops in Latin American countries and in Africa. Those are really big really big operations. You know, Diamond would be akin to Land O'Lakes. So in the US, our philosophy is a little bit different, where it's like we're really trying to find farmers who are trying to preserve land and improve soil. That's what the Burroughs family does. I mean, they're engaged in some pretty radical and amazing things in terms of what they're doing with their land in California. So just in terms of their biodynamic organic farmers, they have chickens running through their their almond fields. Just they're reducing the amount of water they use to grow almonds. So that's like the exception to the rule, though.
Yeah.
95% of what we import is from small scale farmer co-ops, though.
Okay, and then just one more, but it's a good question. I'm interested too. Is
Yeah.
do you roast? Does Equal Exchange roast every pound of coffee they import, or they also sell to other distributors or other brands?
So we don't sell to other roasters. We own two beautiful Probot machines that are warehoused in Massachusetts and have a packaging line there. And I think we all of our roast and pack all of our 5 pound bag. We have a packing line for this is really getting into the weeds here. We have a packing line for our 12-ounce bags, but we've hit our capacity limit for how many bags of 12-ounce coffee we can pack in a day. So oftentimes what we'll do is we'll roast most of that coffee, and we'll put it in super sacks, these really giant sacks, and they get sent to another, what you call a toll roaster or a toll manufacturer, and they get packed in there. So this is a little like inside baseball piece for how manufacturing works sometimes. But so some of our stuff gets contracted to a third party packer, but We roast and pack most of our stuff. We don't sell green coffee to other roasters, though. That would be the one thing. We do a couple private label things for some unique grocery stores, like one on the West Coast, New Seasons, but that, you know, that's a very unique and special and close relationship that we do. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you, Luke. Sorry, we have a very in the weeds kind of ownership here. So
That's my favorite. I do like getting into the weeds. I just know it. I don't want to lose people by getting into the weeds. Yeah.
all right, keep going. We're with you.
So this is our coffee buyer Todd and Carly. They're with two farmer co-op cuppers. I believe they were in Guatemala doing a coffee tasting exchange. So again, this is just more elements, just reiterating how much effort is put into providing really good coffee at Fredericksburg. So that was the quality piece. The next piece I want to touch on is the service piece, which I think is very interesting and unique too. And I got to check my time too here, 6:45. We only have till 7, right? So the thing I want to touch on service is Fredericksburg Food Co-op is this really unique, special thing that has grown out of committed citizens organizing this thing, wanting their own grocery store that's owned by its members. They had the luck to also be part of this national co-op network called National Cooperative Grocers. Fredericksburg Food Co-op also exists within a natural foods industry, which Equal Exchange also exists within. Within that industry, I would say Equal Exchange and Fredericksburg Food Co-op are these pure angelic actors trying to do the right thing in the world. And in between there's a bunch of different businesses that have cropped up that provide great services potentially, but also that are also publicly traded or are held by private equity. They also want to make money off of the natural foods industry. So Equal Exchange's philosophy with this has always been buy direct from small scale farmers, but we also want to sell direct as much as possible to cut out distributors when we can, because when we can do that, we make a little bit more margin that way, but we can also leverage that to invest more in our relationship with that store when we have a direct relationship. So we take on a little more risk when we do that. The food co-op takes on risk because there's not this third-party vendor, they're a distributor to work with. But there's also not this siphoning off of profits that happens. And if you look at Equal Exchange's supply chain, what we're trying to do is create this very short supply chain: farmer, Equal Exchange, food co-op. Standard supply chain looks like farmer, buyer, processor, exporter, importer, broker, roaster, distributor, secondary distributor, and then maybe it gets to your grocery store eventually. There's a lot of opportunities for profits to be taken. So this is all getting to how do we get to that good price on the shelf. We really rely on having these direct relationships, specifically with food co-ops, to be able to sell directly. And we really try, one of the other industry standards is using brokers and distributors. And we really use those as a last resort when we have to, when stores aren't interested in working directly or just can't manage it. Sometimes they don't have enough labor to be able to handle it. Sometimes they're just so conventional that they can't even conceive of working with an independent vendor. But luckily, food co-ops are, out of necessity, are creative and are trying to provide something unique to their consumers. So there is this opportunity to create unique products and unique processes for how we get product to the store. And then the last thing I want to say too, that we help with food co-ops, other stores that are opening, is try to lower the opening cost for for stores. As the board and GM knows, it's extremely expensive to open a brand new store. So a lot of what we do at the outset, what we did for Fredericksburg, providing bulk equipment on loan, as long as it's has eco exchange product in it. We're providing bulk fixtures and brewing equipment to lower the cost of that opening. So um, we even had coffee tricycles at one time. They're not as in operation as much anymore, and they live out in Portland. But these are different ways that we've tried to get coffee to consumers. The other thing we've tried to do too is build warehouses close to bigger customers. So we have a warehouse out east in Massachusetts, but we also have one in Minnesota, and in Madison, Wisconsin, and in Cleveland, Ohio, Portland, and Seattle. And this is all to get closer to our bigger customers so we can provide better service. If we can't do direct store delivery, at the very least, we can get our product to the store the next day via UPS if the closer we are. We don't have that in the Southeast yet. That is my dream, is to have a warehouse somewhere in the Raleigh-Durham area or the DC area where we can do both direct store delivery and have next day shipping for our customers. So when Chris calls his order and on a Monday, says I need 5 cases of French roast, I can get it to him the next day. Right now it's like 2 days, which is not bad, but I want to get down to 1 day. But hopefully Fredericksburg Co-op continues to grow, because the bigger y'all get, the more eco exchange you'll get, the more incentive we'll have to be able to open a warehouse close to you. Any questions about service? I'm almost done, I promise.
Nothing specifically about service, but I got a bunch of other questions. So why don't you finish, and then we'll get to whatever questions we can get to.
Awesome. So the question is, all of those things that I just listed out should create a really expensive bag of coffee, and the idea is how do we get coffee to consumers that's affordable, takes care of all the stakeholders, and is good for the environment, doesn't break the bank. How do you get a 12-ounce bag of really high quality ultra premium coffee and have it show up on the shelf when it's on sale, which the sale starts tomorrow, Chris?
Yeah, tomorrow through May 18th. This and a few other coffees I think will be $6.99.
Coffee is on sale $6.99. That is an incredible price for a bag of 12-ounce coffee that tastes as good as Eco Exchange does. And that's not a biased thing. That's just like market analysis. That's just a really good price for really good coffee. So how do you do that? How does Eco Exchange do that? We avoid profit maximizing. We're not trying to create value for our shareholders like the stock market, like they might do in the stock market, but we still try to be profitable. We want our lenders to like us. We want we have a pool of Class B investors, which are they have non-voting shares. We give them a little dividend on their investment. It tends to be mainly our biggest investors are we have food co-ops that are investors, farmer co-ops, some progressive Christian organizations too that were involved in the Latin American solidarity movement in the 80s and 90s. Those tend to be our investors. They are how would you describe that? They're investors that aren't looking to maximize the gains on their money. They're investing to change systems, right? The other thing that's unique to Eco Exchange, we have a 4-to-1 top to bottom compensation philosophy. So the person roasting coffee or packing food in our warehouse, compared to our executive director at Eco Exchange, our executive director does not make more than four times as much money as them. So we have a very flat payment structure. And working in the co-op world, we're trying to be this for-profit organization as a co-op, but we really are operating as nonprofit, public sector kind of salaries, more or less. My parents are were teachers and social workers. I feel like I went into sales, but I'm still in that same vein of service, right? I'm not going out and making commissions on the work I do. I do this because I really enjoy the mission of Eco Exchange and I'm invested in it. Um, so the other thing, price, right? We buy great coffee and we buy a lot of it. You buy a lot of it. So the I think the C market price is around $1.33, something like that right now, which is the commodity price for coffee. Eco Exchange is paying above 220 for every pound of coffee we purchase, and average is more like 240 to 250 per pound of what we're paying. So farmers are making a lot more money from us, but we're buying it in volume. The other thing is we leverage networks to buy our product in significant volume. So I mentioned this before, but Fredericksburg is part of the National Cooperative Grocers Association, and as a group, these co-ops buy over 1 million pounds of coffee every year. So we leverage that volume to be able to set up very unique promotional programs specifically for NCG to help them provide really good prices for their consumers. And then the last two things are build strong relationships with co-op buyers and general managers, because one of the things that makes my job so exciting is when I get to work with food co-ops that are super engaged with how to figure out how to move more volume of Eco Exchange products. Because they, at the end of the day, if they really get the mission of Eco Exchange, they realize it's not just margins and that kind of things at the end of the day. We are trying to move volume for small scale farmers as much as possible. And so that's where it's really exciting to work with people like Chris, because it's like they get what we're trying to do. It's not just dollars and cents. It's really trying to change the food industry at the end of the day. And then I mentioned this before, is like we're trying to eliminate vampire costs all over the place. The more we can go direct, the better. And so that's what we've done. But yeah, that's kind of the end here. We can open it up for a few minutes of questions.
Yeah, let's do that. So, a bunch of good questions here, but I want to start with this one from Adam,
Okay.
who says, I know you're encouraged. Equal Exchange has always been involved. You talked about May Day, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
encouraging other forms of activism. Can you speak to kind of, does Equal Exchange have official stances on, dealing with, a lot of different countries around the world? What kind of, how do you stay out of that stuff? What do you end up supporting? How is Equal Exchange and activism kind of work together?
Yeah, I think our philosophy tends to be, we're not supporting individual political candidates or anything like that. But we've been involved with a lot of campaigns over the years, and I'm trying to think of some specifically, like even my own personal experience in 2010 when I lived in Wisconsin. They were trying to change the labor laws there. Like Eco Exchange came out and kind of made a statement against that, and we were handing out coffee to the people who were protesting in the streets. Very, very clearly, like we got our start with Latin American solidarity, with the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. Like that was a very clearly political start. Now the Sandinista government didn't really pan out to be great for Nicaragua, but the one of the benefits was this land reformation that happened for small scale farmers in Nicaragua, and that's been kind of the basis of where we've benefited. I think another good example is in tea. in India specifically. The tea system in India is based on this really old colonial plantation system where it's like the large British landowners have essentially ceded land to large Indian landowners, and those large plantations can be certified fair trade, and you can ask the laborers that work on those farms if they know what fair trade is or if they're even getting benefits from fair trade, and they would say, I have no idea what you're talking about. I pick tea. This is the price I get paid for the lot I paid. This is the food I get. This is the shelter. It's the model has not really changed from a concept of what essentially is an indentured servitude. You are tied to that land through that labor. And that could be certified fair trade. That has never felt right to equal exchange. And so we've been pretty vocal about creating an alternative supply chain to that we actually think is fair trade, right? It's either plantations that are owned by is collectively owned by the laborers that have lived there historically, or land that has been divided up for smallholder farming. But we are, yes, we are constantly activists. I think we're always working on and supporting our different ideas and concepts internally. And this is one of the things I would say too, like on the activism front, like if you like what Equal Exchange is doing, go to our website, equalexchange.coop/get involved. We have this whole citizen consumer movement that we're trying to build and expand on the network. So folks that are highly invested in the early stage success of a co-op might find a lot of enjoyment out of what Equal Exchange is trying to do, and connecting all of the pieces of the food system together. Yeah.
That's very cool. All right, I just have one last question.
Yeah.
How can I get mugs like this for all my staff?
All your staff, I have them in abundance. So
Do you really?
we will arrange a shipment for
As
you.
if Equal Exchange hasn't done enough for the first co-op already. Yeah,
Yeah,
I should
well,
have chimed in that when Luke was talking about paying for equipment for startups, Equal Exchange paid for that entire 4-foot bulk unit that you see at the store, the 2 grinders that are there, all the bulk bins that are on it, the brewer that's over by the coffee bar, all the pump pots that the brewer brews into, and along with a big discount on all our first products. So Equal Exchange has been amazing partners. And after these mugs get to us, I'll consider your job done, Luke.
all of our debts are paid.
All right. Well, Luke, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. We're just past 7 o'clock now. Thank you everyone for coming. I think we all learned a ton. And it sounds like there's just scratching the surface really on the fair trade movement and history. So definitely we'll check that website out to learn more. And
Yeah.
thanks so much for being such a great partner, Luke. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This is my pleasure. I hope I didn't ramble too long, but I appreciated it. Yeah.
You're awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.